and your redemption. We come before you to have our hearts transformed, that we may listen to your word and that we may cling to you even when we feel like giving up or giving in. Lord, help us to trust in your goodness, to trust in your hope and in your love, that even in our darkest of situations, even in the greatest of storms, that you will bring with your love a dawning of a new day, a day of joy and hope, a day of bright sunlight that would fill our lives with joy. Lord, may we cling to you. May we hear your message of clinging to you through the life of Job. Do this in spite of me or through me. For this we pray. Amen. So a quick recap of last week. Last week we started our series on Job, and we heard about how Job's life was going. In the beginning of the story, we hear how Job is this great and upright man, that he is in fear of the Lord and that he always tries to do what's right. He's so faithful and devout that even his children, which seem to be the perfect and loving children that they could be, he still offers sacrifices for them just in case they had thoughts of doubt against God. We hear a story of a man who has all of the wealth and comfort in the world, who has his 7 sons and 3 daughters who eat every meal together in the evening and who celebrate all that life has blessed them with, who care for one another. He has a wife, he has good health, and then all of a sudden everything fell apart. First, all of his camels and his goats and his cattle and his sheep are all stolen, and he loses his way of life. And then he finds out that his children were together at dinner, and suddenly the house that they were in collapses, and all 10 of them are killed. And he has to bury all of his children at once. And then we find out that after all these things happen, suddenly he becomes afflicted with a disease, and the disease brings open and infected wounds from the soles of his feet to the crown of his head, and they itch and they hurt to the point that he can't even wear clothing, and he also gets deformed, and his bones begin to fail, and his internal organs start to have issues, and he can't keep food down, and he's in constant pain every moment. And so we find him sitting on an ash pile on the ruins of his family home, in pain and in sickness. And his wife comes to him and says to him, "Job, just ask God to kill you, because I'm done." And she leaves. And we don't hear about her again. And he enters into the throes of depression. We can hear it in our scripture passage this morning. He is begging God to curse the day he was born, to curse the night in which he was conceived. He is wishing, hoping for death in order to find relief from his heartache, his ailments, his pain. He's crying out something else. We talked about last week that the story of Job is not necessarily historical. It is not necessarily about a real person who actually existed, but instead is about human existence, humanity. And this story, this sense of wishing that one had never been born, this deep depression that we find Job in, is one of those places of human emotion that people actually are in, right here and right now. There are people all around us in our communities that long for death, that wish that they had never been born, that curse the day that they were conceived. Circumstances in their lives have not been going the way that they wish, or maybe they have a chemical imbalance in their brain, but either way, they're in those places where there is this great darkness, where they are not ready to act, or where they feel that they really shouldn't act, that they really want to. It is a real place, a real feeling. And it's something that from Job we have the opportunity to learn from. You see, in Job, in this place of darkness, it is to God that he turns to. That rather than trying to take matters into his own hands, rather than ending his own life or doing something foolish, he instead seeks out God. He looks to God for hope and for help. Nowadays, that help can come in a multitude of ways. Through doctors, through even the marvels of science and medication. But it still is most effective when it's rooted in prayer, when it's rooted in our relationship with God. That when we find ourselves in that place of great sorrow and mourning, it is only in clinging to God that we can find that hope for that ultimate restoration, for that ultimate fix of the problem. Because it's only God who has the power to make all things right in the end. Job is a man who has suffered great loss. And rightfully so, he is grieved to his core by it. Over the next couple weeks, we will see how Job continues to turn to God. And in the end, I promise you that we will get to a place of hope and restoration. I promise you that in the end, if we remain faithful as Job remained faithful, we will hear the good news. But for now, we are left still in that darkness with him. Next week, we will hear about his friends who come and try to placate him with platitudes. You know, you'll get through this, or tomorrow's a new day, and all those kind of things. We'll hear how his friends sit there and try to comfort him or explain why these things happened, and all the while they do nothing but make him feel worse. Because in all fairness, that's probably also a part of our humanity and our human suffering, is that the people around us who are not in those places can't ever really try to help us, to fix it. And sometimes we just have to wait. Sometimes we just have to acknowledge that we're in that place and allow it to be. But again, if you stick with me, and if we stick with the story of Job, I promise you there is hope to come. There is a joyful end to this story. And this depression, and this sorrow, and this pain shall cease for Job in a way that we can appreciate. So let us be a people who cling to God and who look to God for hope, even in our darkest moments. Amen.